Making a knife from a lawnmower blade. Part 1, Shaping. William Hovey Smith, 2021. This is Hovey Smith, the Backyard Sportsman. And we're in our knife shop today, and actually going to be talking knives the first time in a long time. And what we're going to investigate is the utility of using blades from lawnmowers to actually make knives out of. Well, I've already gone on the forge and straightened some blades. The first blade I put in is coming up the heat, so we're going to shape it. Okay, that's looking a little more like a knife. Now, this one is off, I'm not sure quite what lawnmower, but off one of my 5. And we also had one we'd already cut off and shortened. But this one is bent in so many different ways that no, there's no sense in working with this piece of steel when we can work with a much straighter piece of steel that's already further along in the process. Now, how big a knife can you make? Well, it depends on whether you want that star hole in the center or not. Well, no particular reason to have one there, but if you cut it in half here, that severely restricts the length of your blade to about, say a 6-inch skinner. Well, 6-inch skinners ain't bad. If you wanted to leave your star hole in the center, then you have the whole length of your blade to do something much heavier with. Now, you still need some tang. And how much tang? Well, it depends on the size of the knife. If you use this whole thing, you're going to want about 4 inches of tang here. Well, yeah. So you get a firm attachment so you can swing a heavy blade without it breaking right there at the joint or something. So those are the possibilities. Now what we're winding up with for design to get the maximum length and utility out of this blade is sort of what might be called a fish belly skinner with a hawk-nosed grip. So the grip starts here and you have a hawk shape, comes along, droops down below the star, and actually the wood would end here. Then you start the blade straight along here, then it upsweeps to the point here and comes down and meets a clip point there. To try to do longer, you run into some problems here with this swell and this irregularity. And if you put a longer handle on it, then the knife is just not at all well balanced. Or if you try for much more length, you run also into balance problems. But this can make a reasonable knife that a man with a fair size hand, mine is smallish, can grasp and actually wield pretty well. It's going to be a little bit stubby feeling. It's going to feel like it needs a little more length, but there's not much you can do about it because you don't really have good steel up here too far to extend it. In production, I'm going to use the angle grinder to make these cuts and take off some of this excess metal, because that's much faster than trying to do it on a belt sander or a conventional grinder. And then the rest of this will work with those tools. Before I start everything up for this cutting, if you wanted to know what the lawnmower blade looked like before I straightened it, well, here's a section of it right here. Yeah, it had a few too many curves in it to use directly for knife making without spending a little forge time on it and straightening some of this out. It is easier with an angle grinder to make vertical cuts than long horizontal ones. And we've removed now these two pieces from our work. And this sort of plunging line here, I'm going to do that standing up and try to get something of that profile. Here, we're going to cut this down into 3 or 4 sections down to this line here, and then start cutting. And that way we'll be able to work it, I think, in a more efficient manner. But to show you what a horizontal cut looks like, I'm going to go ahead and try my best to follow that line. That's not working at all, I'm afraid. It's a throwing spot happened to me. So I'm going to have to work it another way. We'll do the same on the bottom side. The rough profiling was done on the bench grinder. You can shape the entire knife using only a bench grinder if you start with a straight piece of steel. And here is actually a knife I made using only a grinder. Compared to what we started with, our blade is taking shape. We have the profile of it done. And we have this concavity here very largely ground away. But this is not true in the sense that it does not have a uniform thickness, particularly across the handle here. And it is still convex on the other side. Now, if we did the same thing and tried to remove this convex edge, what we would do would be to very much thin the blade. And the blade, compared to what we started with, is already about the optimum thinness. So I don't want to actually remove too terrible much more from the blade itself for a knife of this size. What to do? I'm an author, mainly of outdoor and business books, but I've just produced my first novel, Until Death Do You Part, An American Family Meets Their Sicilian Cousins. And this novel is now available at Amazon as an e-book, as a softcover, and also as an audio book. And please support this channel by purchasing my books. Well, we're going to true up this surface by putting it on a flatbed sander. And that's going to remove more metal. We'll also use a finer grit slightly, which will make it a little higher polish. On this side, we're next going to grind the bevel, which will come all the way up to about here and go to the point. Then I'm going to leave much of this. I'll take some away in the way of polishing, but I'm going to leave this convexity here. This is going to make an interesting blade because we're going to grind one edge only. Leave this edge flat, so when you slice, this hump will push the meat away. To my knowledge, no one's ever designed a knife quite like this, so we're going to see how it works. Two problems have immediately arisen. The first is, how do you get a blade of this length flat when you have this stop on your sanding machine? Well, you obviously remove the stop. So that's a simple solution. The second problem is, how do you physically hold on to the blade? You cannot with just fingers. You have to attach it to something. Ultimately, I need to drill holes in the tang for the scales. So we're going to go ahead and drill those now, which you should do anyway while the steel is soft, and also a lanyard hole here. So we're going to get the holes drilled, and then we're going to use those holes to mount this blade on a 2x4. So we'll have something we can hold on to while we actually polish it on the flatbed sander. We now have our holes drilled, and what we're going to do is take this rod and turn it down. Drill holes here, 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 also here and here, and trim these rods to make sort of temporary nails, and affix it to the wood itself. So we'll be grinding these steel spikes together with the blade itself, but this will help hold it in position while we do the grinding. Although this is soft steel by knife steel standards, I had to use a carbide tip bit to drill the holes. We have 3 steel pins driven deep into this block of wood, so this will enable us to hold it and true up this surface. Now, in particular, before you do any more work on something like this, take a good look at your stress points of your steel. There's no reason to continue if you all of a sudden, say for example, you see a crack radiating from one of these spokes where it's been under stress before, or you see any other cracks running through the steel due to the heating process or how it was treated while it was on the lawnmower or whatever. If you see flaws like this, if you can't cut them out, then go ahead and toss it. There's no reason to complete a knife and spend all that labor on it if you're working with a faulty piece of steel. Now this is a blade from the flatbed sander, and polishing and edging will continue in the next video. In part 2, I will finish polishing the blade, edge it, heat treat the steel, and temper it. Now this exercise is letting the steel dictate what sort of knife it will make, rather than producing a predetermined style of knife. Now this piece of lawnmower blade steel is somewhat soft, will bend under pressure, and resist fracturing. These are characteristics you want in a lawnmower blade, but you need to harden the blade to produce a really effective knife. This can be done in a heat treating oven or back on the forge. Much work will be saved if you start with a blade that does not have a bow that runs the entire length of the blade. For more information on my books, blogs, and nearly 900 videos, go to my website, www.hoviesmith.com. To see how my novel, screenplay, and movie project is coming along, go to followthegrooms.net. Until Death Do You Part, An American Family Meets Their Sicilian Cousins, is now available in softcover as an ebook and as an audiobook from Amazon.com and other books retailers worldwide. The book may also be ordered through your local bookstore or requested from your library. Buy my books and help support this channel. Hunt what you eat and eat what you hunt. Goodbye and God bless.